Welcome to MoTORQUE, the program where we bring you the latest from the world of cars, bikes and adventures on wheels that have torque. Here's what we have in store for you this week. We look into why the BMW X1 is the talk of the town. Take a ride in the Range Rover Classic, which even the Queen of England has been spotted in. We find out how potent the sting in the tail is of the Fiat Abarth 500c.
Hast du etwas Zeit für mich? Singe ich ein Lied für dich.
Lately, you will have noticed a proliferation of BMW X1s on Sri Lankan roads. What is the reason for this proliferation? Simply, it's because the X1 offers a combination of factors and fits very nicely into the categories required for the recent government servant permits. So the people who buy the X1 buy it precisely because it is a BMW that is available in a certain price bracket. At the same time, they claim that it is also a very good vehicle. We are here to put that to the test and see if the X1 actually does stack up as a true BMW. For the Sri Lankan market, the X1 gets the basic interior electrics, standard air conditioning, not even climate control, and a radio, and that about covers it. If you're looking for electronic surprise and delight items like satellite navigation, Bluetooth integrated phone control, radar guided cruise control, and so on and so forth, you're certainly not going to find it here. In fact, it reminds you of BMWs of the early 1990s, where the 3 Series couldn't even be had with a radio as standard. The interior is put together really well and feels like it'll last for a very long time, but to me it just doesn't feel BMW enough. The X1 is sold as a sports activity vehicle, and what BMW would like this to mean is that whether you're a school-run mum, or whether you're someone who likes to drive, or whether you just need the space, the X1 will fit all those criteria. The X1 is a fairly compact vehicle with a seating position that is higher than normal, so all of this helps on the day-to-day drive. Space inside is good enough for 4 people, and the boot is pretty decent as well at 420 litres with the seats up and 1350 litres with the seats down. So it's practical. But is it fun? You look at the specs and it says it's a 2-litre diesel engine driving through an automatic gearbox, so your immediate thought would be, nah, this is not going to be amusing at all. But you'd be wrong. See, the X1 is powered by BMW's most award-winning engine, and this particular motor is considered probably the best engine in the real world by a lot of sources. This little 2-litre mill puts out 177 bhp and more importantly, 350 Newton meters of torque at just above idle, 1750 rpm. What all the technical mumbo-jumbo means is that at the flick of an ankle, the X1 bounds for the horizon and keeps on pulling like an express train through all its gears. When you get to the corners, you realize that the X1 is based off the 3 Series platform and feels almost exactly the same to drive. The steering is absolutely alive with feel, and the car goes exactly where it's pointed. There is no drama, there is no slop or any sense of hesitation. And this is a feeling that you don't get in any other car except a BMW. So for carving up a twisty road, the X1 is an absolute blast. And as a bonus, you can even do some light-duty off-roading in the X1 thanks to its raised ride height. Keep in mind though that the spec we get is rear-wheel drive only, so you are going to get stuck if you want to do any serious rock hopping.
So, what's the verdict on the X1 2-litre diesel? Well, if you're a permit holder, the value for money aspect really can't be argued, because for between 6.5 to 7 million, you can get a vehicle that has diesel economy, is fun to drive, and is also reasonably practical. So, on that basis, I think we're justified in giving the X1 4 out of 5 stars.
Jahre Krieg, ließen keinen Platz für Sieger, Kriegsminister
Coming up next on MoTORQUE.
und auch keine Düsenfliegen.
The Range Rover of the first generation, or Range Rover Classic, is well known as the vehicle that originated the SUV craze that swept the world for the past few decades. It was in fact the very first vehicle that combined the go-anywhere off-road capability of things like the original Land Rovers with passenger car comfort that actually equaled or even in some cases bettered saloon cars of the time. This concept ended up being so successful for Land Rover that the Mark I Range Rover continued in production from its introduction in 1970 all the way until 1994 with very few changes. What you're looking at right now is a 1989 Range Rover Classic, which is equipped with the 3.9-litre Rover V8 engine, so it should promise to be a very good drive. This Range Rover is owned by Mr. Chandima Gunaratna, whose day job is selling Land Rovers. Because of this, or perhaps other reasons, he has owned a total of 22 different Land Rovers over the past 15 to 20 years. So it's safe to say he knows these vehicles inside out, which is probably why he bought a 20-year-old V8 engine Range Rover. So we had a chat with Chandima about his Range Rover. To summarize a rather long conversation, Chandima told us that this Range Rover is actually his second Mark I Classic. The first one being almost in identical spec, but in slightly less good condition. He is attracted to the Range Rover Classic apparently because of its combination of performance and all-round usability. Indeed, this particular vehicle is used very regularly and is his primary choice for trips to our national parks. Chandima says that despite being a 20-year-old vehicle, it does not give him a lot of trouble. To improve its capabilities, Chandima has upgraded this particular example with Bilstein suspension all-round and front and rear ARP air locker differentials to complement the standard center locking differential. All in all, he tells us that this results in phenomenal off-road capability, and he is not afraid to take this particular vehicle on the most arduous of terrain. To show us what the Range Rover could do, Chandima took us out onto the open road and stretched its legs more than a little bit. And from the passenger seat, it is a very interesting experience because you'd never expect something this old, this tall and square looking to be quite as quick as this Range Rover turned out to be. In fact, it turned out to be so much fun that I wanted to have a go myself and proceeded to grab the keys.
Okay, so Chandima, do you mind me taking this out for a spin?
Not at all.
Would you mind if I do it by myself?
Not at all.
Superb, then I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Sure, no problem.
From the driver's seat, what's immediately noticeable is just how modern this Range Rover feels. The visibility is amazing and you sit up high. The controls are brilliantly optimized and it just feels as if you're driving something that was built yesterday, despite the fact that this vehicle is so old. The upgrades that Chandima has made to this particular Range Rover include a sports exhaust system, upgraded air filter, and some tweaking to the engine management system, as well as the suspension tweaks that were mentioned earlier. All of this works together to make this Mark I Range Rover feel almost like a modern Land Rover product when you're driving. It feels very immediate, there's no slop or wallow in the controls, and all in all, it just does not feel like an old vehicle at all. The 3.9-litre V8 engine originally put out 190 horsepower. With the tweaks that Chandima has fitted, this has risen to maybe 200 to 210. But what it feels like on the road is like something with double that power at least. Instant shove is available the second you put your foot down, and the manual gearbox, which is a rarity among Range Rovers of this generation, helps in the quest for immediate acceleration. The soundtrack too is absolutely amazing, reminding one of an American muscle car. Being a tall off-roader with quite long suspension travel, you wouldn't expect the Range Rover to handle too well, and for the most part, this is what it proves to be. It does change direction, but it is not very immediate about it, and it would really rather be going very fast in a straight line. The Range Rover suspension consists of coil springs front and rear and live axles. Combined with the aluminium body, this translates to supreme axle travel and excellent off-road performance. Of course, what this means on the road is that you get a vehicle that isn't all that enthusiastic about the process of changing direction. Chandima's suspension tweaks to this particular example have helped somewhat, but it still does not feel very enthusiastic when you're going through corners quickly. This then is very much a straight line machine, and at that it absolutely excels. Actually, the Range Rover turned out to be so much fun to drive that I took quite a lot longer than the few minutes that I told Chandima I would be.
Coming up next on MoTORQUE.
Abarth is to Fiat what Cooper is to Mini. But you can be forgiven if you haven't heard of it before. This is mainly because Abarths in this country have been non-existent thus far. The name Abarth itself comes of course from the brains and the brawn behind the operation, namely Karl Abarth, who was born in 1908 in Vienna, Austria, under the zodiac sign of the Scorpion, which would go on to become the sign of the company. His engineering talent was quickly recognized, and at just 16 years of age, he received an apprenticeship in Italy, designing bicycle and motorcycle chassis. From there, he went on to race competitively, both in motorcycles and automobiles. After World War II, he decided to settle down permanently in Italy, and even changed his name to the more Italian-sounding Carlo to fit in better. In 1949, Carlo Abarth founded Abarth & Company, which started off providing sports exhausts and other go-faster bits for various European car models at that time. It was a little later that he decided to form his famous association with Fiat, and started off by buying the small Fiats such as the 500 and the 600 straight off the production line and tuning them and upgrading them in various subtle and not so subtle ways to turn them into the legendary Abarth race cars that became so famous in competition. In fact, it was said in the 1960s that the Abarths would eat Mini Coopers for breakfast on the racetrack. In 1971, Abarth was purchased by Fiat and it became Fiat's performance division. Since then, virtually every small Fiat built has had a performance derivative bearing the badge of the Scorpion. Due to a variety of factors, Sri Lanka has not been stung by the Abarth Scorpion. Until now, that is. Here then is the 2012 Fiat 500 Abarth Essess. What this is, of course, is the Abarth tuned version of the Fiat 500 city car. Abarth have effectively taken the standard small engine Fiat 500, tuned up the boost, fitted a sports exhaust, changed the intake, messed around with the engine internals, and the effect, of course, of the standard Abarth is 135 bhp. This car, though, the SS, in fact takes it a step further. It has 160 bhp and quite significant 152 pound-feet of torque in standard mode. In sport mode, the torque goes up to 170 pound-feet. For a car of this size, that is pretty spectacular, and it should result in excellent performance. In addition to that, you can also specify various interesting options, such as an even more aggressive exhaust system, stiffer suspension, and bigger wheels. The owner of our car today has fitted an Abarth SS exhaust and a stiffer suspension system as options to this car. So effectively, it is a very hardcore driver's car, or that's what it is meant to be. Right now though, when you're going along at slow speed, it's surprisingly refined. International reviews say that this spec of the Abarth SS is actually quite a stiff rider and somewhat uncomfortable on the road. However, even in Sri Lankan conditions, which are in fact somewhat worse than other countries, we find that when you're just pottering along, it's actually quite a nice place to be. The engine is quiet despite the sound that you hear when it starts up. When you're idling, it just sounds like you're driving a normal 500.
te io li vivrò con te.
The interior of the Abarth is lifted very much unchanged from the standard 500. So effectively it is an interior that's designed to remind you of the classic Fiat 500. It is with its painted plastic dashboard that looks like the original's painted metal, and the round dials, and the entire look and feel of this interior is meant to make you think of the classic small 500. But of course, being an Abarth, there have to be certain sporty touches to remind you that this is a car with driver focus. And that too is here in spades. You've got these wonderful sports seats that grip you in just the right places and support you very well, and are even quite comfortable. Then you've got the steering wheel, which is compact, covered in an excellently textured leather, and feels very good to grip. And of course, what you can't miss is the boost gauge mounted right up on the dashboard in your line of sight, complete with shift light, that's there to remind you that this car is powered by a 1.4 litre turbocharged engine. The other special aspect of this particular 500 Abarth is that it is not the standard coupe or closed roof car. This in fact is a 500C, which means it is a convertible. The convertible roof is designed to evoke memories of the old cloth sunroof 500, but of course this is 2012, so the technology is modern. One touch of this button and you've got fresh air. Now the 500 Abarth we tested today was actually within its running-in period, so the owner asked us to take it very easy when we were driving, which meant of course that we couldn't really drive very fast. Nevertheless, even within that set of parameters, this car is extremely fun to drive. The little engine, although it is only 1.4 litres, doesn't have a lot of work to do because the 500 is quite light, and thanks to the turbocharger and all the other tweaks that the Abarth has, it's very eager, and the moment you put your foot down, no matter what revs you happen to be at, the car lunges forward. And that, mind you, is in standard mode. This car also has a sport mode activated by pressing a button on the dashboard. When you press that, everything about the car is sharpened slightly in quest of driver involvement and enjoyment. The steering sharpens up just a little bit, throttle response is made more immediate, and even the exhaust sounds a little bit different. Overall though, no matter whether you're in sport mode or standard mode, the Abarth is quite quick enough for our road conditions. But the really great part about this car is its handling. Because it's compact, you can throw it around almost like a go-kart, and it is extremely eager to change direction no matter what the circumstances are. The steering too is a joy, perfectly weighted and absolutely responsive. It tells you exactly which way the front wheels are pointing, and your slightest input and correction is translated immediately as a change of direction. So, as a driver's car, the 500 Abarth, even as a convertible, is quite an exciting drive.
She is a beauty, isn't she, boys? That's all we have for you for the Abarth 500C. That's all we have for you this week. Tune in next Wednesday for more fast-paced action on MoTORQUE. Here's a sneak peek at what we have in store for you next time.